Welcome to this week's edition of Focus on Connecticut. I'm Tom Appleby. We've invited two area state representatives to join us. They're actually freshman lawmakers. I want to get their perspective as first-term lawmakers and also on what's going on up at the Capitol. State Representative Gail Lavielle is from Wilton and Norwalk. That's the 143rd District, and she's a Republican. We now know the breakdown of the layoffs. We have a pretty good idea. There's 6,000 in the executive branch, 4,300 through layoffs and retirements, about 1,600 by not filling vacancies. The hardest hit departments, and maybe not a surprise, corrections, one of them, one of the areas where the union voted not to go along with the agreement with the governor, and transportation. So let's start with these. How will the state respond to this?
Well, I think we have to be careful, Tom, in looking at these as definitive, because as we left the special session on June 30th, there was also the hope expressed by some of the folks on the Appropriations Committee that the unions would come to some other sort of agreement, or they would modify the way they vote on the agreement that was proposed before. Everything was left very much up in the air. The governor was obligated to come back with a proposal by today, which he has done. The General Assembly, which normally has the right to vote on those things, in which he insisted at the beginning of the session he would like to have the General Assembly vote on. The vote was, no, we won't necessarily come back and pronounce on that. We can, but we're not required to. So he comes back with his proposal today. I believe the General Assembly has till August 15th to either vote up or down, or else it just becomes effective. But the unions have until August 31st to say whether an agreement on concessions might still come through. So I'm not sure this is definitive.
Is this the way to go? Cut 6,500 jobs. Republicans have said in the past there are lots of programs that could be cut without necessarily lopping off heads, in effect. Well,
I think ideally, but of course this is utopian, ideally we would have concessions on different ways that state employees are compensated, because to bring them more in line with the private sector. Failing that, then you face other types of cuts. And I agree with Representative Rose. No one wants to see anyone laid off. No one does. But when the choice is between, give up something on your health care, give up something on your retirement, give up a salary increase for a few years, or have layoffs, it's a shame when it has to be layoffs.
And talking about the layoffs, in the prison area, the corrections officers and the fact that 2 prisons are closing, we have one local union president saying, without a doubt, we will have a riot by the end of the year in these prisons because of alleged overcrowding and too few staff members. And he's forecasting more crimes like that horrific Cheshire home invasion in which 3 people were killed, all a consequence of these layoffs. Doom and gloom?
Oh, I wouldn't even start with the layoffs. I'd go back to the bill that was the implementer bill that was passed that allowed early release from prison for many types of violent criminals. And that, to me, was the most distressing thing, and to many of my constituents during the session, where there were still sex offenders, arsonists, people who have committed very violent crimes will be eligible for early release simply for good behavior. And I think that's perhaps the greatest danger that we're facing, and that has become law.
Part of I mentioned earlier, the areas that are being cut, the transportation department is being cut. The transportation budget was cut. This is an area that is near and dear to the hearts of people who live in southwestern Connecticut. Is that one of the more serious aspects of this budget cutting process for us? Bridges that aren't going to get the same attention, roads that are deteriorating that aren't going to get fixed in the same timeline.
Transportation has been a problem in this state for a long time. And it's certainly disappointing when you can't allocate enough to infrastructure that not only is falling apart, but also needs improvements, needs to be changed and developed. Our rail line down here is Metro North and its branches. You know, it's the most used commuter rail line in the country. And I know that we have to be very much in sync with the rest of New England in terms of talking about high-speed rail and so on. But I was disappointed to see so much bonding done for high-speed rail when it would have taken so much less down here to fix the branch lines and upgrade them and make them compatible with the main line once and for all. In fact, I sent a letter to the bonding committees, bonding subcommittees early in the session with the support of bipartisan support of more than a dozen legislators from Fairfield County to see if we couldn't prioritize some of the projects here. So yes, I think transportation funding is essential, and it is disappointing to see.
Your leadership was very vocal about this. You know, we were supposed to be taken in and be part of the process, and very quickly it was clear that Republicans were not.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that are noteworthy. We didn't sit there and complain and say, no, we don't like it. We made concrete proposals, and that was something that our leadership and our whole caucus felt very, very strongly about. And also, we have a sort of way of operating where if we don't agree with something, no one has ever told us how to vote. But when we put the budget together, it's a very consultative process, so that we all get to bring our input so that if there's something we don't like, we say so before we even get to the vote. And it's very collaborative. So we did propose a no tax increase budget, and of course I agree with Representative Rose that this budget is larger than the previous year's budget, and it goes up this year and then it goes up again the following year. The spending did not only not decrease, it increased by about $1 billion over the 2 years, and when you're having very difficult economic and fiscal times, I don't see how you can increase spending. And then you have this huge, largest tax increase in Connecticut's history. And every time there's been flexibility, with the unions get a second chance, the General Assembly is told, no, you're not going to vote. The taxpayers, no flexibility. You're stuck with it. These are your taxes. This is what you're going to pay.
Let's talk.
What has really enraged, and enraged is not too strong a word, my constituents, is the fact that the income tax and the estate tax are retroactive to January 1st. People still haven't completely registered that, and when they find it out and they hear that they're withholding on their salary checks on August 1st is going to be substantially decreased because now it's taking into account the first 7 months of the year, they are furious. And then, of course, there's the businesses. We have the 20% corporate surcharge, which was supposed to sunset to nothing. So it's doubled instead of sunsetting to nothing. We have the Amazon tax, remote sellers, the sales on the internet, a number of things like that that are going to affect businesses. And so there's been a great deal of skepticism as well about Connecticut being open for business.
The state rewards employees, state employees who are with the state for more than 10 years with longevity bonuses that they get twice a year. The Senate voted to revisit this, got to the House, didn't happen. Is this a small, insignificant thing?
No, I don't think it is, because where in my district, in Wilton and Norwalk, there's so many people who work in the private sector, and they don't have any such thing, and they haven't had a defined benefit pension plan in 20, 30 years. All the big companies got rid of those. So when they see something like a longevity bonus, just being paid basically for going to work, just being there a certain amount of time, not related to performance, not related to anything except longevity, they get pretty angry. And we did some communicating about that midway through the session. And this last Senate vote, again, was interesting because I've seen in the press that they're saying, well, the governor wanted this and the Senate voted on it and the House didn't want it. But while they were debating it in the Senate, the Democrats said, no, we know it's not going to the House.